2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2. That's all we ask. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Fast forward 7 months later. We're still going to maintain lockdowns. Governors, local state governments have reaped enormous numbers of new powers because of this. They are exercising them like egomaniacs. At some point, people just want to live their lives. What if you had 1 year left to live? If you were a cancer patient, do you think that you would not want to just go out into the woods, and if you die of coronavirus, then big deal? Because that's actually kind of what's happened. The majority of deaths are people with comorbidities. They've been nursing home patients that have died, that would have died several months later. The coronavirus just happened to speed it up. As 210,000 people dead. Of those 210,000 people, many of them were very, very ill. Nevertheless, you have massive numbers of people that are shut in their house, experiencing misery. And for what? The disease, unfortunately, in my opinion, is already endemic within the United States, within the world. It's not going anywhere. So why are we still shutting down? 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's gone. That time has long passed, and you are seeing uprisings in part because of this. Do you think that the riots that continue to happen in Portland and elsewhere would be continuing to the rate that they are if people weren't fed up, if they had other things to do? But no, you are shutting down the economy. And part of the reason of that is political. The blue state governors want to suppress at the cost to their citizens economic production in order to get Donald Trump out of office, in order for Kamala Harris to go on the debate stage and say that Donald Trump is responsible for the economy. But this is patently false. It is the blue state governors that are shutting down the country. They are re-shutting down New York, not necessarily because there are so many more deaths, but because there are more cases. This is just an example that even as you take precautions, that the disease will continue to spread. Now, I personally very well might have had it in March. We were traveling around by plane, and I came back with the sniffles, and a few days later, for one night, I could not breathe. I could breathe. I could not smell. I could not taste anything. And it was the freakiest thing in the world because no matter how sick I've ever been, I've always been able to clear my nose and been able to breathe. Whether or not I had it is another story, but I very well might have. And if I got it, then perhaps I have antibodies in my system and I will be resistant to the disease. This is what happens. The virus burns through its host reservoir, and then it decreases in terms of its ability to spread because so many people have already developed the antibodies to it. This is what they were trying to do in Sweden, and it looks like they've been relatively successful. The Swedes, while they still practice some forms of social distancing and they're still encouraged to wear masks, are largely over it. This is true in most of Northern Europe. This disease is here, and the only thing that we're doing is delaying its spread. Now, maybe we'll get a vaccine, and that will be fantastic. But again, we have to be able to look at the downside, because in economics, there's always a cost-benefit analysis. So, a potential benefit to lockdowns is the fact that maybe fewer people will get it. Maybe there will be fewer deaths. Great. That is a potential benefit. Let's put that on that side. On the other side of the equation, you are locking children in their homes. You are depriving them of school. All that money that's been paid in property taxes to fund the schools, where is that going? For Zoom educations, which aren't nearly as good, with the children slacking off. Our education is taking a hit. The sanity and the well-being of children that need to be able to interact with their peers is taking a hit. Parents are being forced more and more to tend to their children, to stay at home, which increases stress. They're not able to go and be productive in their jobs. Their jobs are being taken away from them. More and more people are rioting and looting and burning stuff down. This has negative effects, of course, on employment. The government has to print more money to give to them, which devalues the savings of other people. Many people are falling into alcoholism, into depression and drug abuse, and there are tons more suicides and drug overdoses than there were in the past. So the healthy, the young, are being disaffected at very disproportionate rates, because at least with the older people who get the disease with comorbidities, okay, it does take a few months off of their lives, but as I said earlier, they're already in the nursing homes and it is listed as a COVID death. Also, the number of COVID deaths is exponentially greater than it actually is, because you can get away with putting COVID on a death certificate, as Dr. Drew explained on one of his podcasts. You are able to do so, but if you put something else, then you have to be able to explain it. And the easiest thing to do is to put COVID. And also, the hospitals are being incentivized monetarily because they get more money for each COVID death certificate that they issue. Yeah, you follow the incentives. I do believe that the number of people that have actually died of COVID rather than something else is far less than what they are actually reporting. Nevertheless, again, we have to be able to look at the cost-benefit analysis and see whether or not it actually harms society or benefits society. My idea is the fact that we should all be responsible for ourselves, for our own well-being, and be able to mitigate the risk as much as possible. And that includes wearing masks in public. That's fine. Got nothing against that. You can socially distance. You should be able to go to the cinemas and sit 6 feet apart from one another. We should be able to go into restaurants and do the same. How many restaurants are closing down? How many bars? And all these people have lost so much money, their life savings that they invested into the business, and all the sweat equity and love that they poured in as well. And for what? For what? Yes, you are maybe reducing the number of deaths slightly, but at what expense? And that has to be the question that we ask ourselves. So when Joe Biden tells you that he wants a 3-month lockdown, I'm going to tell you that society can't handle it, because so what, even if you lock it down and it works? Somebody comes in, reintroduces the disease, it spreads to a few people, and then it rages out of control again. What, you want to lock down on a continual basis, or do you want the virus to be able to burn through its host reservoir and become potentially less lethal, which is the general trend with viruses over time? Secondly, in about 10 years from now, you are going to have high school students with access to be able to change the genetic code of many, many viruses, and it's guaranteed that somebody is going to intentionally or unintentionally, and likely intentionally with the case of Al-Qaeda and the other terrorist organizations, release something onto the public sphere that is going to absolutely destroy the world. And the loss of life will be far, far greater. So what, you want to shut down until then? Because that's really the only case if you want to keep deaths to 0. Okay, guys, once again, the message is the cost-benefit analysis, and you have to be able to see that accurately and not live in fear. Look, I know that I live far less in fear than most people. I mean, I've crossed the Russian-Mongolian border on foot. I've been in the deserts of Syria as the only white person there without a gun. Right? This is before everything blew up there, by the way. I've done some crazy stuff in my life. So I do believe that that's probably the better way to live, in my opinion, because death will take us all eventually. So it's just a matter of time and how well we live our lives until then. And by shutting everybody in, by shutting everything down, by eliminating the ability to see each other's faces, we are lessening our quality of life in the little amount of time that we have on this planet. If you guys like this video, please share it with a friend. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a big thumbs up, and I thumb up your day and hope that it's an incredible one. Peace out, everybody.